Thank you everybody for being here. This is Awesome JavaScript. If you haven't been here before, it's a monthly meetup for JavaScript developers. We meet on the third Tuesday of every month. Our meetups are sponsored by the lovely Cloudflare, who's given us the space to be here right now. I don't work for Cloudflare. I'm Joa. I work for Square, who is not a sponsor of this meetup. If you're not already, I invite you to join us in Discord. That's where we have a lot of conversation between meetups and discussion about things we're learning. I encourage you to do that. And also, we have shirts available for sale. If you're interested, they're over there. They cost $25. It's a donation to the meetup. It helps make the meetup happen and whatnot. We have an agenda that is actually inaccurate because Front-End Masters raffle is not going to happen this month, unfortunately. But beyond that, the other things apply. We're going to talk first about accelerating migrations with AI, then Shad is going to come tell us about nutrition, and then Orly is going to tell us about universal tools for AI. All right, and I am going to be up first. I'm going to give a quick lightning talk about migrations with AI. So let me get set up. This is truly just my anger materialized into a talk. So here we are. Like I said, my name's Joa. I work for Block. I have been on a journey recently. The last time I came and gave a talk here, I was talking a lot about Playwright. I'm here to give you an update that I really enjoy Playwright. I've been working with it a lot. If you aren't familiar with Playwright, it is a competitor to a replacement for Cypress. It enables you to automatically test your application in the browser. It has some really cool tools. A couple months ago, I was here talking about how you can use that within VTest. But that's not what I'm here talking about today. I'm talking about my mistake at a big company trying to make an architectural decision, which is that there's been a lot of appetite recently for among technical leadership to prove out using AI to speed up big migrations like this. So moving from Cypress to using Playwright. And I've learned a lot of stuff along the way, and I'm learning that I personally am going to be on the hook for moving all of Square's Cypress code to Playwright, which is not my ideal thing. But I can tell you about this AI migrate tool. This is Block's AI migrate tool that they have open sourced. It is pretty useful, and it allows you to chain together LLM steps to go and step-by-step migrate a code base from using one technology to another. It's fundamentally built on this idea that you should be giving LLMs small scoped tasks and then validating that they have completed successfully after they run. I'm using this LLM Goose, or Goose is not an LLM, it's an agent, it's a coding agent that it's running with Claude. All it's designed to do is run these local development tasks through the LLM and execute them step by step, exactly like I'm describing. I've also been using the Playwright MCP a lot, which if you are using Playwright, you should also be using the Playwright MCP. It is really, really cool because what it enables your LLM to do is actually open up the browser and see what's happening on the page in order to debug and repair your tests. Very useful. This is the basic loop that you're working through with an AI generation, or an AI migrator. All of this code is written in Python, which is, it's our least favorite language after JavaScript meetup. We are going to collect the context, the necessary context, and we're going to pipe that into the LLM, which is going to be responsible for gathering the necessary information from our MCP servers and then executing that task. And then the really crucial necessary piece is that LLMs are not deterministic. So we have to validate that the task executed successfully after you execute the migration. And so we have to have some task that we're running afterwards to validate that it worked successfully, and then we'll just move on to the next chunk. Here's what that output looks like in the terminal. This is boring, but it's really interesting to look at closely because you can see we're working through our individual step files coming from Cypress, and here's the step that we're on, and here's our LLM that's working through each of our individual steps, trying to migrate it to the new framework and then verify that it actually works successfully by running the tests and verifying that they work successfully. And that's it. It doesn't work very well. That's really my conclusion right now, is that AI not being a deterministic system is really, really frustrating to figure this out with. but it is getting better, and the key to making it successful is giving it really small tasks and letting it like heal itself and work through those. And that's all I have, so thank you all. Next up, Shad is going to come tell us about nutrition. Shad, I have a microphone for you. Oh, wow, I had 3 minutes left. All right, you have 7 minutes. Go for it.
All right, this is going to be a quick presentation on nutrition for software engineers. Also, it's going to be a real-life demo of terrible stock photos in presentations. So why should you care about nutrition? Well, there's the metaphysical considerations. Some say you are what you eat. Think on that for a moment. It's actually really concerning if it's true. Some people want to get old, and they even want to be happy when they're old. I apologize that there's no diversity in stock photo actors. This was the best I could get. But yeah, being happy and healthy when you're old. And also your health and well-being today. Let's talk about long-term effects. Guilt and shame right now. Let's talk about all the things that you're not doing. Let's talk about who sleeps enough every night, who limits their alcohol, who eats right, who exercises every day, who spends less money than they make. All the things, right? This is just going to be another talk about that. Well, it turns out that people know generally what they should be doing, but knowing that something is right isn't good enough to actually make changes. So I'm hoping to give you a little bit of information beyond knowing that eating right is good for you to actually help you affect positive changes in your life. Because what actually happens is, even though we know it's right, we live by the philosophy of YOLO, and pizza is irresistible, and you know the rest of the story. So I'll outline a few benefits that you can get right now, starting today, maybe tomorrow if you're already really deep into the pizza. But anyways, immediate benefits. First off, stable energy levels. No more mid-afternoon crashes, no more 4th cup of coffee at 2 p.m. Stable energy. Body dysmorphia. No more eating something that you know you shouldn't eat and then feeling like your life is in shambles and you're in worse shape than you actually are because of what you ate. Also, gastrointestinal discomfort. Some things that you can do to improve your nutrition. Eating more fiber. These are some fruits and vegetables. Nuts are also fiber rich. Why fiber? Well, it turns out that fiber slows down the metabolism of glucose. Why care about that? Well, the more rapidly your blood sugar rises, the bigger the dump of insulin that your pancreas has to release to capture the big spike of glucose. Fiber tempers the amount of glucose that can be processed at a given time. The reason why a big insulin spike is problematic is because it promotes a chronic condition called insulin resistance, which I'll touch on later. Drinking more water. I don't feel like I really need to explain this one. It actually helps with pretty much everything in your body. Consuming healthy fats like olive oil, avocado oil, and even butter and ghee. It turns out that a lot of contemporary research is calling into question the hypothesis that saturated fats are bad for you. You see, I ran out of time to compile stock photos for the full journey, but it turns out that in the 1940s and 50s, the US government was influenced by a few academic policymakers who took a trip to the Mediterranean during Lent, and they saw people who seemed very healthy not eating much meat. And they came back with the conclusion that grains should be eaten in abundance and fats generally should be avoided, especially saturated fat. And some sketchy correlational studies have been cited thousands of times over the convening decades to support the idea that saturated fat causes heart disease and promotes diabetes and is correlated with high cholesterol levels, which then contributes to the heart disease. But modern research is calling that into question. In fact, I think it's debunked it. There are a few books that I'd recommend that I wanted to put on the presentation that I didn't get to. One is called Genius Foods by Max Lugavere, and the other one is called Why We Get Sick by Dr. Benjamin Bickman. And all these slides will be available in the Discord, and I'll add links to those books. But what these authors and researchers are suggesting is that insulin resistance is the primary culprit of heart disease, diabetes, dementia, and potentially cancer and our chronic disease epidemic. Some researchers have called diabetes dementia type, or they've called dementia diabetes type 3. And it turns out that insulin resistance in the brain is strongly correlated, if not causally established, to be a contributing factor to dementia. So we talked about the glucose spike when you eat carbohydrate-rich foods without fiber, fats, and proteins to slow that down and temper it out. It turns out that every time insulin is released, because insulin is a hormone that nearly every cell in your body is sensitive to, then your body, in an effort to establish homeostasis, it starts ignoring the insulin bit by bit more in the future. So if you're in a chronically elevated glucose state, then you'll be in a chronically elevated insulin state. You're snacking on more carbohydrate-rich foods, basically anything with grains in it. And what happens over time is that the cells become resistant, and so the more insulin is needed, and more and more. And according to Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who is a researcher at Brigham Young University for metabolic disease, he said that in his book he tied it to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, dementia, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, erectile dysfunction, PCOS, and several other complications.
What's PCOS?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome. So, a few considerations for you now that the butter is gone.
Oh, and the time.
And the time's up, thank you. Is call into question the American Standard Diet and look into some new authors on nutrition. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad. What am I going to eat whenever the GitHub goes down next time? And next up, finally, but not least, we have Orly to come talk about things and stuff.
Should I try to do the clicker thing just for lulz? So how many people ate pizza tonight? Because, yeah, fuck the diet. Hopefully it works.
Well, it's not going to work. There's no way. Nothing works on this.
We believe.
No, let's see. There you go.
Okay, so my presentation is a Mexican net. MX.
Well, it was working.
Try again.
It was so ready to work.
Should we try to plug it on, off, and on thing?
Yes. But it's not.
Oh!
It wants to so bad.
Do you have your own laptop? I can send you the link.
Absolutely.
Well, let's see.
Oh, now it's gonna work.
Okay,
It's gonna
cool.
work.
Thank God. I have so many tabs open.
There it is.
I don't want to lose
Yeah,
it.
it's working.
Okay, so how many people here have heard of MCP? Okay, half of the room sleeps under a rock or something. So in November 2024, MCP came out. I created one server, then I created another server. I thought it was pretty stupid, but it took off, and now everybody talks about MCP. The next thing that came out was A2A. That's like the new thing. But I'm going to talk about everything, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is myself, because I'm an egocentric person. So, my name is Orlando. I come from Europe in peace. I've been in Austin since 2015. I have 0 exits, so don't come look for me for money. That's my Twitter, my email. I love web scraping, so. All right. I also tried to ask Perplexity to give me like an intro or a bio about me, and it completely failed. If you want to see how horrific it is, that's the QR code. I bet nobody gives a shit. Let's talk about agents. So everybody's been talking about agents, oh, I'm gonna build an agent. What can I do with agents? The hardest thing to do is find a use case for an agent. Like, do you want an agent that can like reach out on your LinkedIn contacts? Not bad. Do you want to have an agent that will like optimize your inbox for some reason? Not bad. Problem is, this is what a schematic of an agent looks like at the basic, right? I stole this from Anthropic, by the way. You put some data in, the LLM does a bunch of stuff, and then you have an out. If you write a bunch of for loops, if you're good enough at for loops, you can build an agent. Congratulations, make 200K a year now. I wanted to show you a demo of using one of the most prominent agentic framework out there. Has anyone heard about Mastra? Raise your hand if you heard about Mastra. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So Mastra is like this super cool agentic framework that allows you to build a bunch of stuff. It's really cool because it gives you like a whole interface. So you can go into, if I find the right, where the fuck are they? Here. You can have this like whole playground on your local machine, right? So you have, this is all like open source, by the way. You don't have to pay a single dollar for this. You can just go and build your first agent. If you know how to write TypeScript, I made the first agent I built with Mastra was an event agent. An event agent which you can talk with. It's going to do a web scrape and then return some data. The kind of data that it's going to look for is on Luma. So we're scraping Luma. Are you guys familiar with Luma? All right. So let's ask the agent for some data, like what event is live, in Austin on June, and then let's pick a date. June 24th. We like AITX, so if you don't know about AITX, you should go to AITX, by the way. So June 24th. So what happens here is like, I wrote the code for the agent. It's calling, GPT-4o Mini. GPT-4o Mini is then told, oh, there's a user request, and you have a bunch of tools. These tools allow you to do superpowers, like scraping the internet. Boom. This is the output. Let's verify that it's correct. Yeah, let's see. ATX 530 by Jake O'Shea. So, Jake, are you in the room? Fuck. Let's try and impress Jake. So, you basically just scrape the web with, Firecrawl, by the way. So, you were using a tool that I actually built in the background, which does an API call to another service called Firecrawl. Has anyone heard about Firecrawl? Another 5 people? All right, we have a lot of workshops to do, so everybody comes up to speed with what's happening in AI. So this is gonna be one of many. So in the event tool, this is what the code looks like. You create a tool. This is all Mastra, by the way. It's how the framework works. You create a tool, you just say, okay, give me a name, whatever, and then you call an API, and then you put the API key, and then you say, okay, it failed, or otherwise, like enforce a response. And then all of this comes out as a beautiful, response to the user. There's many more things you can do with Mastra. I'm not gonna go in deep into Mastra. That would be a workshop about Mastra. This is not a workshop about Mastra. So now you know that basically tools can be used by agents to do cool, superpower-like things on the web. Send emails, scrape the internet, connect to Salesforce, send those annoying messages on LinkedIn. Hey, we wanna connect. You can do all of that. You just need to know how to write function calls. And function calls, usually, what they do is tools, right? AKA function calls. That's the same word, by the way. Tools, function calls. 1 equals 1. if you have enough services, you can build really amazing functions. So that brings us, that was like 2024, like summer, January, whatever, end of 2023, function call was big. People were like, wow, I can write code, and then this code can actually do actions on behalf of me, and I can then spin it up into some kind of agent to do things. Yes. The problem is, every single developer was writing their own functions. So now if you want to send an email, and you want to send an email, and you want to send an email, you're all writing kind of the same code, kind of like different boilerplate, but you're probably all using like SendGrid or Gmail's API or MailChimp, whatever. So then this thing called MCP came out, right? And I should probably use this again. So hopefully MCP is like a model context protocol. Some dudes at Anthropic were like, oh, let's take a really cool concept like function calling and let's make it better. So the members of the technical staff at Anthropic decided to invent MCP. It's used for AI, for LLMs, to perform complex workflows. Some people describe MCP as the USB-C adapter of AI. It gives AI access to tools and prompts and resources. Honestly, it's just like a context loader. So you're just basically telling the LLM, hey, look what's going on. You can do new things, and the user wants you to do other things. It can also be used by agents. So you can have like MCP clients connect to MCP servers, and then you can wrap a client in an agent. And maybe we'll see how to do that later. The core idea is like, you want to put, like I said, the information into the context. So if you are trying to do a certain task, like scraping the Luma for, hey, what are the events this month? You can basically ask the LLM to do it for you if you have the right MCP server. And they also try to kill function calling. Like the whole Anthropic people are like, hey, we're gonna kill function calling. No, it's not gonna happen. Streamlined approach, yeah, okay, I already said that. Cool. So, what do you need to use MCP? Like, you need a host, you need an application. A mobile phone, you install an app that has an MCP client, right? So you can have like Cloud Desktop app, you can have Cursor, you can have VS Code, you can use whatever application you want that supports MCP connections, right? So you have an MCP client inside of VS Code, inside of Cursor. That's why you can connect to these servers. My voice just broke. Servers, gateways. Okay, so the server is basically like, okay, so the client is how the user interacts with the MCP protocol or the MC protocol. And then they connect to the server so they can get data or perform actions. So what's in the client? Like, people are like, okay, how do I build a client? Well, there's a lot going on. There's a connection manager that handles authorization. You can choose between different transport mechanisms. These are just some of the 2 most used ones. And then the client takes care of parsing messages, errors, success, all this kind of stuff, so that you don't have to do all the hard work. The client connects to the server, and they continue this conversation in between themselves. So there's much more as well. I'm not gonna go into the whole protocol. It's like hours of content, right? And then you have the server. That's where the magic happens. If you like to write API calls, if you like to write wrappers, that's probably what you would be writing, the server, the MCP server. So for example, when you see about the MCP Cloudflare server, all it is, it's like this bunch of API calls that have been mixed and remixed together so that they can connect to the client, so that the user can connect to those APIs. And so if you use the MCP Cloudflare server, you can ask Cloudflare about documentation, for example. You can ask the MCP Cloudflare server to create a new worker for you. You can basically do anything that you could do with the Cloudflare API via text inside of VS Code or Cursor or Cloud Desktop app. And the most used things or primitives inside of a server are tools, which are basically a list of things that you can do. Resources are basically think of it like snippets of code. When you ask Cursor to say, hey, what's wrong in this code, and you highlight, and then you ask an MCP server to debug that code for you, that text that you're highlighting or the context of the code that you're looking at is sent to the MCP server by the client as a resource. And then you have prompts. Everybody knows what prompts are. It's just a way for the server to say, hey, this is how you use me. You know, like these are some recipes. Okay, so here's the whole day-to-day if you're an MCP user. You're an MCP user, you have a host app, a cursor, whatever. The client that's inside of cursor connects and gets a list of available tools from the server. So you need to connect, you need to have a list of servers to connect to. You can get these servers from like smithery.ai, you can get them from the 12 launch partners at Cloudflare, which is like Linear, GitHub, yada, yada, yada. There's many, and they all host these servers for you. You just need to have a connection string. I'll show you how to do it in a second. Then the query that you, basically after you connect, you create a query and you send it to the LLM. And basically the server sends the tool descriptions to the LLM. Then the LLM decides, okay, well the user asks me, hey, how do I deploy a new Cloudflare worker? Okay, so the LLM connects to the MCP Cloudflare server, knowing that there is a documentation tool, and then the tool will respond information back to the LLM. The results are sent back to the LLM, and then you have a nice answer, which is like, hey user, okay, I'll teach you how to deploy a new Cloudflare worker on the Cloudflare network. Here's the step-by-step, you know, that typical wall of text that you get from like ChatGPT kind of mind, right? And that's how it ends. You can have multiple servers. So you can have one server for Cloudflare, one server for something else. It doesn't really matter. You can add as many servers as you want, but there's a gotcha. The more servers you add to your client, the more hallucination will happen. Technically, they say they support up to like 128 servers, I think, but it gets really confusing after like 10. Especially if you have servers that are overlapping. So imagine you're sending email and you have Gmail, and then you have SendGrid, and then you have MailChimp all connected into your Claude desktop app or your cursor. It's gonna be really tricky for the client to like pick the right tool to do the job, right? Also, some servers can connect to local data. They don't necessarily have to be all API wrappers, but yeah, that's another one. So don't panic. I'm gonna try to show you how to do it. Because it's a WTF moment for everybody, I suppose. All right. You can also learn more. If you want to just get started and build your first MCP server, shout out to Cloudflare. They have a lot of tutorials online. This will allow you to not only build your first MCP server, but also deploy it on their own infrastructure. You don't have to pay for it. It's usually free when you sign up, as long as you don't exceed whatever free tier. And you can also choose to have authentication on your server if you desire to. So if you have a user that wants to use your server, which might be, I don't know, like a proprietary API call, you can make sure that they don't just access any data, right? So there's all that. Okay, little demo time. So this is something that I'm working on. It's called Toolhouse. Toolhouse is, I guess it's a CLI first kind of thing. So I'm gonna show you. When you want to build an agent with Toolhouse that has MCP support, you basically build a YAML file. This is what's inside a YAML file. You have an ID, you have a title. All of this doesn't make sense, but it's all cool. A system prompt, you can use variables. All of these things are very easy. You don't need to be a developer to build an agent. As long as you know how to write English, you can just basically do that. You can also add support for your own model. Maybe you don't want to use the default model. Maybe you want to use Grok's model. Maybe you want to use Anthropic's model. So there's a bunch of stuff. And then here at the end, okay, we also have RAG support, but you can add a link to an MCP server. This one here specifically is Zapier's MCP server. That means I can connect to like 8,000 other integrations, right? I can read my emails. I can send data to Salesforce for those who like to do that on their private time. Anyway, once you write this YAML file and you configure it properly, you just, you're basically done. You built your first agent. Congratulations. Round of applause. Yeah, thank you. And so if we go back, I don't know what I wrote here. You're a community manager bot that sends messages to the general channel. Okay, super random. And then in the first message, it was like, can you send a Slack message in the general channel with a haiku about pizza, since we're keeping it healthy, right? So now, what's healthier? What's a healthier food you said? Like olive oil? I like olive oil. All right. Olive oil. Perfect. Shift ZZ. All right, now we're gonna run it. And if everything worked, we're gonna get a haiku into the general channel in a few seconds. Or maybe not, let's see. Okay, so this is what's happening. It's connecting to the Slack send channel message. This is an MCP server hosted by Zapier. It wrote a haiku, and technically you should send it here. There you go, it worked. You wrote your first agent with 0 lines of actual code. You are a vibe coder to the max. Now the cool thing is, you can deploy this agent so it can run, whenever you want it to be. So you just copy, paste the command. I actually, .yaml file. That's a bad developer experience. Oh, also I should not use that command. I should use this one, because this is the, what do you call it? The work non-prod, whatever. I don't know. I can't even type. Help. Okay, so now it's deploying the agent. And you basically can call an agent with this curl command. So every time you hit this curl here, it's gonna run your agent. Now you can set it up as a schedule. We also support that in Toolhouse, but you can also just do whatever you want with it. Maybe you want to build a lovable interface. This is kind of like the interface for Toolhouse. And okay, can you send a Slack message in the general channel with a haiku about an olive? Cool. If you want to build a UI around this agent, you can literally copy paste this, go to lovable, and then you can build a bot. Like, you don't even have to use your brain. You just built a haiku sending agent. All right, let's see if I don't run out of credits, we'll be cool. Meanwhile, while this build, I continue the presentation. Scan this QR code to get started and start building MCP servers. It's not fun. Okay. Next protocol. So MCP, to recap, tells LLMs about superpowers, about things that otherwise the LLM wouldn't be able to do, like send email, send Slack messages. But what if you want agents to collaborate, amongst each other, like real teammates? Well, MCP does not support for that yet, but A2A by Google does. And get ready, because this is going to be kind of wild, okay? So what can A2A do? Well, in the world before A2A, if you had different type of agents and your own agent, they wouldn't be able to communicate, they wouldn't be able to connect to each other in a simple and standardized way. You'd have to hard code all this stuff or build your own framework, etc., etc. But then Google came out and said, you know what? Since MCP is taking, becoming famous and whatever, we'll build our own. So what is an agent-to-agent protocol? It's a protocol that enables the communication between agents. It's not for humans, right? So if you don't really see the A2A protocol, that's between agents communicating and delegating work to other agents so they can work together. And why is that? Because it's better to have one agent that does a simple task and does it well than one agent that does a million things and gets them all wrong. The way it works is you expose an agent card, which is like a business card in human world, and you basically tell, hey, go and find this agent card for any other agent in the network. Of course, you need to tell where these agent cards are, and the best practice is to put it under this .well-known folder at whichever URI you desire to host your agents at. And they communicate between each other with the messages, and then once they're happy and they have this little world, like their little handshake, then they basically start sending each other tasks. And the way that you get these tasks to be, managed, you have an agent orchestrator. And it's really complicated. And it's another topic for a whole different workshop. I'm not gonna go into this, but that's kind of like the high level, right? If you grasp something out of this chart, it's like you have a client and a server. Every server has an agent card. They can use tasks, and then they communicate between each other with messages. And then there's more other stuff here for yes.
Do they? What language do they speak? Is it English?
It's JSON RPC. Yeah, so it's like MCP. Same. I should have said that.
But there's no standard
That's the standard. They're building the standard.
binary.
No, it's like JSON, right? It's like humans can also read it. And I think the A2A protocol has two major SDKs, the Python one, of course, you know, and then the Java one, I think. There might be a TypeScript one too, I'm pretty sure there is. So here's a typical interaction between A2A agents. You request the card is JSON. Suddenly you're like, hey, I need you to do this assignment. Like, I want to book a flight to Madrid. Okay, let me create a task. Then the task goes into processing. It can be synchronous, it can be asynchronous. There's more communication between the client and the remote agents, or just any agent really. They use this thing called messages. Then eventually, the work is done, and you receive an update that the task has been done, and usually you get another message to say, hey, here's the answer that you were looking for. Go ahead and do whatever you want to it. And usually that initiating agent, the client agent, will then kind of like show to the human what the answer is. So are they fighting each other, MCP and A2A, or are they, what do you guys think? Who thinks they're fighting each other? Does anyone think that MCP and A2A are competing? One person? I think so. I think behind the scenes they're competing for like who does it better, you know, and right now everybody agrees that they're not, they're like complementary. Because as a reminder, MCP is just a way to allow the LLM to interact with external tools and any data source, whereas A2A, it's the collaboration between these agents. It's not so much about what can the agent do, you know, with the external data. So they're complementary, that's the outcome. Yeah, I said all of this, cool. Okay, the last piece of the puzzle. How many people heard of AG-UI? Woo, damn, you guys are winning something tonight. Lifting your hands every time. Okay, so I'll just show you a demo of this. This is something that I blogged about like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's becoming a reality. I think it's really cool. All right, not this one. Actually, I'll start with this. The idea of AG-UI is that, okay, you do all this work behind the scenes. You have MCP giving, you know, context to the LLMs, and then you have different agents talking to each other with this MCP server client connection, yada yada yada. But then the user has to kind of like parse the data, you know. And if you're used to using ChatGPT or whatever, like you always get markdown. Right? It's kind of ugly. You get bullet points, there's like headings, you don't really get much else. You basically barely get support for images. But if you look at Perplexity, they've done something nice, right? Like they're this like client, obviously, but they have like embedded images, widgets, things are interactive, and they look nice. Because the human is not just like a consumer of text. They like, you know, like Steve Jobs moment, you know, like, yeah, things have to look nice. I don't know, I probably didn't say that, but he's dead, who gives a shit, so. And so like Perplexity, you know, like did this really good job. Compare this to, what's that other small company? This one, Google AI mode. Oh my goodness, nothing is interactive, it's just markdown. Like you can smell markdown. I mean, dude, right? It's just, there's no interactivity, and like, you know, a small company, just casual. But what I think Perplexity did right is that they realized that the UI for the end consumer needs to adapt to what the output of the LLM is. And that's basically AG-UI. So if any front-end designers in the room, take notes, take notes. So let me click on this. Nope. Man, so many clicks. Oh no, help. Why didn't I make this a hyperlink? There you go, I made it a hyperlink. Now I can click on it. Nope. I can. Now I can. Ha 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 ha. All right. So here's I guess like a demo that the people behind AG-UI, this is not me, this is a company called Copilot Kit. I don't really know what they do, but I know they put out this standard and it's pretty cool. So here's you know, let's see if I can do, like, okay, hi, I'm an haiku generator, how can I help you? And I can say, create haiku, damn, today's only haikus, about olive oil, because it's healthy, right? And you will see that it's not just text, it's this like widget. And the reason why it's a widget that still looks like shit, but it's better than just text, it's because the people who built AG-UI or whatever, they're telling the interface that when you have a response that looks like an haiku, you should show like a nice little widget. There's another demo you could probably say, I don't know if this is the right one, but change the background to red. And basically, just there you go. Oh wow, what a demo, incredible. Terrible demo, but the point is that the UI adapts to what's happening between the interaction human LLM, or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, whatever it's in the middle. Okay, we're almost there. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the Google page where you saw that as a markdown?
Yes.
Like, how would you, like, bring the point all the way home for us? So, within AGUI, what do you see? Like, I'm still confused.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you could probably have a widget for adding a reservation. You could have like sliders on the side that show you like the pricing. You know, like, hey, show me super cheap or super expensive, right? You could have all of that embedded into the UI because that information is obviously in the response. It's just that Google AI mode does not really do a good thing at, you know, front end parsing or whatever you want to call it, like rendering that data in a human-like adjustable form. And it's all about making it a better experience for the user, since we're obviously going to be using this going forward, unless Sundar Pichai decides to like fucking all of the whole AI thing. But I mean, compare that to Perplexity, which is a slightly better. It's, you know, it's not perfect, but they definitely have more time to, you know, like you have like some extra metadata here that's rendered nicely. There's an interactive gallery. Wow. I can actually see what the pizza looks like without having to navigate to the website. I have like extra metadata here. I can click and just get directions immediately. Like, it's pretty cool. I don't really get that with this. You know, I click here, it's a dumb link to Google Maps widget, you know? So, and of course, AG-UI is like the latest of the trending like protocols. So it's like very new. They have still like trying to figure out a lot of things. If you go on the repo for AGUI, there you will see that there's a lot of work in progress stuff. And yes, sir.
So is the AGUI interface deterministic, or do you have like a generic prompt that's like make it pretty, and like whatever that means?
I would say right now it's not super deterministic. It's more like, hey, this is some of the things that you can render based on the output. But I think it's gonna get better. So invest in AGUI.
Can you show us code of AGUI?
I don't have it right, I'm sorry. Do I have it? Shit. Nope, that's the wrong one. I did link everything here. So just go ahead and in your spare time, you know, just go and read it because I can't really go through that right now. There's a lot. Oh boy. Oh, they do support TypeScript, so perfect. And then there's documentation. I actually never implemented AGUI. I just know about it because I went on the first community call like 2 weeks ago, and I thought like, hey, that really sounds like that blog post that I wrote 4 or 5 years ago, where I think that operating systems will never have a UI written ever again because we have all these components and we can just build apps on the fly, right? Like it just needs to be an API call with some metadata that says, this is an audio file. And the operating system should know how to render that audio file. So anyways, that's a different story. Yeah, so this was kind of like the slide that brings them all together. You have MCP, allows you to like access, oh, there's another question, sorry, person at the back.
Could AGUI use something like MCP itself to generate the UI?
Ooh. Yes, I think it could. It could call a tool which generates the component and then somehow it gets evaled in real time. Yeah, I think so. That's a good question. Any other questions about AGUI? I'm not a speaks person, whatever, representative. No? Okay. So this is the last slide. I don't know how long I've been talking for, my throat hurts, but agents, they can connect to each other through ATA. agents can discover superpowers or tools or whatever you want to give them through MCP. And then when you bring it all together to the human, it goes through something like a GUI. Potentially, a GUI dies and another company comes up with a GUI, like maybe OpenAI, since they're kind of like lagging behind. Google has something, Anthropic has something. Who's going to be bringing it all together? Maybe V0 and all the people at Vercel. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if Vercel actually built a way better version of a GUI and just destroyed a GUI like tomorrow, because they're like the front end dudes, right? So of 2025 at least. So as a user, there's a lot to be looking forward to, and there's a lot to learn, especially from seeing kind of like the hands that were raised. Like, there's a lot of people still learning about this stuff. All right. So what do you do if you want to learn more? These slides are under that QR code. They're open. You can take them. You can find me if you want, Toolhouse AI or Sunglasses Face on Twitter. If you want to talk to other people that are really interested about this kind of stuff, you can join aimug.org. They're the best group of people, in my opinion, to chat about what's coming next in AI, what's trending right now in AI. They do monthly meetups. They do regular phone calls on Discord. It's probably the most active Discord in Austin, Texas, with people who are developer-minded. And some people are here in the crowd. I see Colin right there and some other people. So anyways, to learn more about MCP, A2A, AGI, and of course, if you're just super new to AI agents, this is probably the best link for you. I hate Anthropic for many things, especially not giving me a discount on their whatever, spending $200K a year on their shit. So, but they have a really good blog on how to build effective agents. And this is just like the 101, right? So if you're interested in agents, go ahead and read this. And you learn a lot. And I did steal one of their images, by the way, so don't sue me. I'm not a member of the technical staff, so that's a joke. Okay, any other questions before yes, sir?
Are you using A2A at all in Toolhouse?
Not at all.
Can you show us some examples of A2A?
Oof. Should I? Let's see.
Why take some?
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Like, it's like two people who don't speak English speaking English to each other.
User inspect the user protocol.
I can debug the industry.
This is the agent space interface that Google put out that basically supports A2A, and technically there's like multiple agents working here behind the scenes. I think A2A is way too immature to be used. I mean, think about it this way. November, MCP was created. I was lucky enough to hear about it. I built 2 MCP servers. One for Toolhouse, which enables you to connect to Toolhouse and do a bunch of like background work. And then the other one was like a documentation MCP server for discovering new MCP servers. It was called Pulse MCP, which is also the name of the website. But anyways, and after that, like 2-3 months came by, and me and my co-founder, we were basically shaking hands, and we said, listen, if OpenAI supports MCP, we're going hard on MCP. And then one day, Sam Altman just goes, oh, I guess everybody's doing MCP. We're gonna add MCP to ChatGPT. And by the way, we still don't have real, just barely usable. There is though, OpenAI does have the Agents SDK. And with the Agents SDK, you also can use MCP. Of course, Cloudflare has an Agents SDK, which supports building servers and other stuff. And most players nowadays, even Vercel, the AI SDK, has support for MCP, both servers and clients. And that's what we use at Toolhouse, the AI TypeScript SDK for adding support to MCP. So we can basically connect to third-party servers other than our own internal servers. So that's a in production use case.
Do you know where the context exists in A2A? Like, is it in cloud-based?
What do you mean, like in the cloud base? Like the agent has its own context.
Yeah, like what I'm thinking is like I understand what my context is on my computer at home, right?
Mhm.
Computer when I talk to the server. But with A2A, it's 2 separate things far away. Like where's the context shared? Is it shared?
So there's this messaging protocol between agents. That's how they share some bits of context, and that's how they also build the task that the agent then goes and can execute. And then they also, it's basically like a hive mind. Yeah, but yeah, it's all thanks to the agent orchestrator, the A2A orchestrator. I think, yeah, it's again very new. I haven't used it yet. I'll be honest. I've gone through the documentation. I understand how it works, but I haven't implemented it yet. I don't really have it. Let's be honest. Most of agents are huge for loops with a lot of niceties around it. I'll keep repeating this until I literally die. You don't have to use a framework. You can literally just build agentic stuff by just calling directly an LLM, passing some function calling, and then maintaining the context with whichever. You can even use SQLite databases and just like create your own context protocol, whatever. So Cloudflare people, good job for that, I guess.
Can you show us your implementation of the Toolhouse MCP?
I can, but I can not in front of everyone. Because it's not open source.
Right.
I can show you like later. If anyone's interested, come over, I'll show you, just not in front of everyone like that. It's in the code base.
Can you repeat your email? You said it was
Oh no, my email is, wait a second. Yeah,
Tool AI.
there we go. If you have serious questions, that's my email. I try to not answer serious questions, unless you have code questions, and yeah, I can answer those. Just, yeah. And this is my Twitter. I don't know if anyone wants to DM, send some memes, just send them over here. But yeah, if you want to see how we did it with the AI SDK.
Are you able to show us? I've never seen how an MCP server is implemented.
I mean, I can show you, MCP AI SDK, and we can go through it. Click here. So there's different types of transportations, and then you can, and it's experimental, right? So there's a lot of things are changing. In Toolhouse, we specifically created a client here. A client basically allows you to connect, like I was explaining before, to those MCP servers. Here we go, here's some code. So you instantiate it. And then here it supports this STD.io. That's the standard I/O. It's like the oldest protocol method to like communicate. And it's basically if you have a server that's local on your computer, you want to use STD.io. Otherwise, you're more, what do you call it? Standard I/O? Yeah, standard I/O. Yeah, it's just.
Wait, can you repeat that?
Sure. So MCP servers can either live in your computer, so if you can install them on your local machine, but they can also live on the cloud remotely. And so there's different types of transport, like message transport layer. One of them is standard I/O, STD.io here. But you also have like server send events, and then you have streamable HTTP. So depending on what you want to do, like for example, say you want to connect to Jira, like a project management tool. Like, yeah, you could install the server on your local machine, but realistically, what you want to do is connect to the server that's hosted by Jira themselves, like Atlassian.com, right? And that way, you basically connect your client on your machine inside of whatever app you want to the data source, which is hosted by Atlassian. And what Cloudflare did very smartly when MCP was becoming kind of peaked in terms of popularity, they said to the major companies in the US, like Stripe and GitHub and Slack, and they said, hey, we have the infrastructure to host these MCP servers, so you don't have to host them yourselves, right? And then your users can connect to it, and we'll handle all the traffic. And we'll also give you authentication. So if you connect to like GitHub, you have to provide it's a typical OAuth authentication, whatever, dance. I don't know, what's the technical term? The OAuth dance, like the flow, right? Handshake, thank you. The shitstorm, yeah, it's tough. And so basically, what happens is, the first time you try to use, say, the GitHub MCP server, your host application will say, hey, hold on a second, before you connect to the GitHub MCP server that's hosted on the GitHub server, actually Cloudflare, you have to authenticate your account. So you basically see this login page, you click maybe on a URL, whatever, and then you put your GitHub username and password, and then it does the whole callback, and then you're authenticated, and now you can start using the GitHub MCP server through whatever app, whether it's, again, Cursor, VS Code, or your own client. Yeah, and then when you do that, then you can say like, hey, build me a new repo, or list all the PR that are open, or like search for issues in this other repo that my organization has. You know, you can do a lot of administrative or project management-ish style tasks without having to learn either the API or the UI of GitHub, because sometimes you get lost. I mean, even I get lost on GitHub sometimes. Like, where are the tokens stored? I don't know. Like settings, developer, beta, legacy, yeah, something like that. Any other clarifications or anything you want to know? I can talk about the things I've done, not about the things I haven't done. If you guys are interested in learning more about A2A, I can come back another time and just do a deep dive in A2A, and I'll, you know, because I think we will implement it at Toolhouse just because of the way that the industry is going, and if it's not A2A, it's like whatever else allows agents-to-agents communication in the future. Yes, Colin.
So you talked a little bit about MCPs and the use case putting MCP in front of Jira, right? So can you expand a little bit on how you see like the resource and RBAC presentations that you can express for MCP, expressing it through the stack you just described?
Interesting question. How do I, the resources that are in are you talking about the resources like the MCP resources?
Yes.
Okay, so MCP resources, for those who don't know what it is, it's a primitive of MCP, which is basically like information that the LLM can use to give to the user, or it takes from the user to answer the question. In the example that I had earlier with GitHub, which is, in VS Code actually, when I ask, MCP server, like, hey, find a Sentry-related bug to this snippet of code that I just highlighted. That's an MCP resource. That highlighted code is the MCP resource. I'm basically sending that data to the server. And for Jira, I guess, I don't know what an example of that would be. I guess maybe like an issue number. It could be, I have no idea, honestly. The Jira resource. That's more like what gets translated to which tool. I think a Jira resource is probably like a snippet of knowledge that you give to the server to be able to call the right tool. Do you understand it that way, or how do you have a better definition for resource maybe?
No, I was more, feel free to strike Jira and throw in whatever you want in the back of it. I was more trying to understand in that specific use case of like a subset of the MCP functionality, how you see that being expressed, whether it be through the A2A JSON, the services capability or something, or dynamically expressed through the AGUI interface.
Think of a resource like a GET request for a database record or something like that. We are using it, for instance, to exposing resources out of databases which are not mutable. So think of it as a GET request of a database, for instance.
A resource can also be like a text file. Think of it maybe also as an attachment. That's a good one. Like I was looking at the documentation and it was saying like PDFs or text files are also resources that are attached with the request to the tool. So the LLM, can do its job. But again, it's kind of crazy. We're not even a year into MCP and now everybody is using it, or at least half of the room heard about it. The real question is how many people are going to build either an MCP client, which by the way, there's only maybe like 20 big clients. There's not that many at all. There's like thousands of servers. My favorite place, to find out about new servers is Pulse MCP.
Wait, did you make this?
No, I only made a server. Well, I know the guys who made this. So I made an MCP server that you can use into your MCP client inside of your app to then discover new MCP servers. And by the way, the guys that are making Pulse MCP are now working with Anthropic. So this started as an open source thing, and now Tadas, Mike, and the rest of the team, they're literally working with Anthropic to make the official MCP registry. So that's a pretty cool story to tell. You know, going from nobodies, just two dudes in the Bay Area, and now working with Anthropic on a real thing. Cannot disclose that. Another good one that has superpowers is Smithery. This one technically has even the ability to host, like they can host a server for you. If you don't want to do it on Cloudflare by yourself, they can do it for you. It's kind of like a different, you can just deploy it. And then if you're just interested in integrations, like Zapier, Pipedream, those are big, and then there's Composio. Those are all like kind of like API integrators that give you the superpowers via their MCP server. And so again, just one last time, if you have your client, you connect to like Zapier or one of the other ones I mentioned, and you can have access to like thousands of actions. Write to Salesforce, send emails, create a new spreadsheet, delete a file on Dropbox, the typical Zapier-like interactions. But now it's through an agentic workflow. So you can get $200,000 salary telling your boss that you did something with AI. Thank you, that's all I have. If you want to see some code, come over. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next another event. I'll do more ATA stuff another time.
I'm excited.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Arlie. So TLDR, agents are for loops, and MCP is just function calls. So that's what you need to know. If you